Hi, everyone. My name is Latika Pai, and I head Microsoft for Startups. Welcome to our webinar series as part of our Highway to 100 Unicorns. As many of you may know, we launched the Highway to 100 Unicorns, where we are working in various states in India. We've done 6 such events in Gujarat, Rajasthan, Kerala, Maharashtra, Telangana, and Goa. We had a founders boot camp, and the founders who were part of the Emerger X winners were a part of it. During our interactions with several of you in all of these different cities, I think we met over, close to 700 startups, across our journey. And many of the startups actually came to us and said one thing that they lacked was access to great mentors and great sessions. That is the reason why we are bringing to you this series of webinars with world class experts to help you all in your journey as founders. For our very first webinar today, we have Bala Girisiballa, who is the president of Techstars. Former MD, he had actually my role at Microsoft for Startups. Now he's in a much cooler role with Techstars, who does a phenomenal a webinar series, actually, in-person series on go-to-market on GTM. We've done several of these with him in person, and I requested that he does this because I think today the challenge many founders have is what do we do in terms of customer access? How do we approach customers? Are we in literally a lull mode, or are there innovative methods in terms of what we need to do? So Bala has put together a presentation for all of us, which will be about 60 minutes long, post which we will have question and answers. So please feel free to post these question and answers, rather questions, and at 5 p.m. we will start the Q&A. In the meantime, for all of you people who are going to be tweeting, we have a great swag bag for the best tweet and post on social media, and we will post that to you as soon as the lockdown is lifted, and we can mail that across to you. Bala, welcome to our very first webinar online for audiences that have come in from all across India and the Middle East. Thank you for finding the time, and look forward to hearing what you have to say. Over to Bala.
Thank you, Latika. Thanks a lot. And it's a fantastic initiative that Microsoft is doing for helping startups in this particularly troubling times. So I'm very happy to run this webinar rather, and then kind of take questions that would come our way at the end of it. So I'm going to kickstart by sharing my presentation. So just give me a minute to start the presentation. So thanks, folks, for joining. Like Latika rightly said, these are not normal times, and therefore it requires us to really reset our thinking and in terms of how we look at our markets, our customers, our business, everything else. So with that, I'm going to get started on the presentation. This presentation is going to cover primarily the topic of your GTM aspect, particularly in challenging times. We all have our GTM strategies, but particularly in challenging times, we need to think about our GTM a little differently. And with that, I will get started on the context. Why are we having this discussion here? We certainly are in a very unprecedented time. In over 50 years, we haven't seen this type of a crisis. And it's very widespread impact for everybody, not just small companies, but large companies as well as countries are struggling to deal with it. So these are not a normal time at all. If you were to think that it doesn't hit us much, it will very soon. And it is hitting every sector that's possible, that's out there. And the global GDP impact is phenomenal. And then right now what we are seeing during the lockdown period is more of a health impact, but it may last for a couple of quarters at most. But the economic impact of it will last many more quarters. It will probably drag through the entire 2020, and it might even stretch to 2021. Hence, I think our the way we should actually be thinking about this should really be, kind of, we have to do a reset in our thinking. Is there a silver lining to this, or is it all gloomy scenario? I think the silver lining here in all these tough times is the fact that I'm happy to see that the governments are responding very aggressively, and happy to actually see that particularly the government in Asia is actually responding much more aggressively than other governments in other parts of the world. The second part, I think, is that technology is definitely helping in terms of blunting the impact. This impact would have been even more severe if we didn't have the technology infrastructure, the cloud infrastructure and everything else to at least run our business remotely, run our business while we are in the lockdown. And the third is, it's not a positive, but the impact is secular. It's not that only you are affected. Nobody is spared. Everybody is affected. Every industry, every demographic, every geography is affected. So it's a very unique situation where we are seeing such a secular impact across the world. So this is a very unique situation for us to kind of deal with. How do you brace for impact? So my presentation is going to be in two parts. One is to kind of provide a broader strategy of how we even look at not just GTM but overall business in the new light. And the second part is specific GTM strategy that we will kind of talk about. Right. So the first part is just looking at broader strategy for all the startups. How should we think differently given this current situation? In my opinion, you have to have a 9 to 18 month reset plan. You just chuck your existing plan for 2020, recreate a new plan which at least covers the, let's say, 9 months to about 18 months plan. There's no scientific basis, it's just a gut feel. My feeling is some industries will bounce back a little faster than the other industries, and some industries will have more severe impact than the other industry. Therefore, it's a broad guideline. At the minimum, think of a 9 month plan in the COVID scenario, and at the worst case, think of an 18-month plan in the COVID scenario. And since different industries normalize at different speed post this health impact, once lockdown is opened up and all that stuff, you will start seeing a lot of demand contraction in some areas and demand expansion in other areas. So the normalization will happen at very different speed, and it will also differ across industries. And so you need to keep those things in mind. Now, if you were to think about it, how do you brace for this impact is primarily you have to, you do it in 4 steps. Step number 1, you assess the impact. How is my startup impacted by this COVID situation? So that is first is assess the impact, and the whole idea of assessing the impact is so that you prepare your runway in a way that you can get through to the other side. You have to prepare yourself to dig in and stay put until things get better. So that's the first thing you need to do. Second is, from that assessment comes the second point where you have to optimize your operations to conserve cash burn. You need to create a runway for a minimum of 9 months to about 18 months. I would say the closer you are to creating a runway for 18 months, the better you are. So you need to create a runway by optimizing your operation, which is in your hands right now. Then the third part is you have to assess the new normal. What do I mean by that? Is that your market is not going to swing back to the same place where it is right, yesterday. Your market is going to shift. Your customers' needs are going to shift. Their behaviors are going to shift, and your pattern, you will see that your market and demand pattern is going to shift. So what will the new normal look like once the COVID situation passes you by is something that you need to have a view on. I mean, you may be wrong about it when eventually it happens, but you need to have a view. That's very important. And fourth is, based on these 3 things, you are assessing the impact, you're optimizing your operations, you're also assessing the new normal. You now need to decide what kind of a pivot you need to do for your startup. And I don't see if there is a startup which comes and tells me, hey, you know what, I don't think we are impacted, I don't think we need to pivot, I think you are missing it. I think you are completely missing the gravity of the situation. Every startup in today's climate need to pivot. The level of pivot and what kind of pivot changes, and that we will talk about in the next 2 slides. But you need to prepare a pivot and create a plan for that. So these are the 4 steps. Now let's look at what is it. I'm going to walk through each of these 4 steps. Each of these steps got 1 slide each, not too much of detail, so that you can contextualize those framework or tools or the template that I'm going to be talking about in your own context. I can't help you. I can't help kind of create one for every industry, but I'm giving a generic framework that you can easily take and then contextualize it within your own startup and your own industry. Now let's take the first one, which is assessing the impact. How do you assess the impact? This is a simple framework that you can draw out, and you say that, look, given the COVID, what part of my business, and of course you may be selling one product or to one segment or to multiple customer segments or multiple products. So you need to do this for each of the products and each of the customer segments, and you have to say, what is my COVID impact? Is it like mild or moderate or really severe? Which part of my business is mild? Which part of my business is severe? What is the revenue impact that I'm expecting? Is it I'm expecting a very mild 5-10%, 20% to on the severe side, 80% reduction or demand contraction? What is my cost impact? How am I set up to manage that? And what is the new normal is going to look like? And you have to basically take a pen and a paper and start writing down what does this look like in 6 months, in 12 months, and in 18 months. This is the time frame, and the severity of the impact is what you need to write down. This will help you assess what percentage and what part of your business is under stress, and then it will prepare you for the next stage, which is to say, how are you going to address that? The second step, once you do that, is that you have to relook at your cash burn. You have to throw away your budgeting, the previous budgeting, your sheet, and then create a new one. Number one, few of the things that you have to be doing is move to your core. If you are running, bunch of products, or if you are targeting bunch of segments, you need to look at which segment is core to you, which segment gives you 80% of the results, and only focus on it and cut down ruthlessly the rest of it. You have to really bring down 20-30% of your cash burn right from this. If you think, oh my God, I don't have a 80-20, I think for me everything is spread out and it's equal results for equal effort, you are thinking wrong. I'm being very prescriptive, and I'm being very, very pointed in what I'm saying, but I'm saying it because I want to kind of provoke a thinking process in your head to think a little more radically. And this is where you need to really be critical of your own business view. Many founders are very optimistic, and which is a great quality of a founder. But at this point of time, you need someone. You need a voice of reason. You need a voice of a little bit of a pessimism, so that you can prepare for the scenario. I'm not saying that's what will happen, but for you to be prepared for that scenario is much more important than for a large company or somebody else. The second thing that we need to think about is you have to rethink experiments. Most startups, while they have a core, they also do a lot of experiments, a lot of projects or things that they think are the periphery, and you just need to rethink and deprioritize and shut it down if possible. Third, you need to rationalize your sunk cost. Many startups, they fall a victim for this, is that if you've already spent some money in an area, you think that I've already spent the money, so I shouldn't drop it, I should just continue in this process. Please don't fall into that fallacy. If you have spent some money, it's not your core, feel free to just shut it. Even though you have spent the money, you're not going to probably recoup the money. You should shut down any sunk cost that is there. Don't follow through and start building just because you have sunk some cost in the past. 4, look at all your variable costs. Every variable cost needs to be questioned, and it needs to be optimized and pruned. Number 5, match your burn to your runway. And if your runway is, you need a runway of about 12 months, then you need to match your burn to 12 months. If you have a runway of 18 months, you need to match your burn to 18 months. I just got I'm sorry, I'm going to pause here. I just got a message from Latika that you guys are not seeing my my slides. So I'm going to move back up. I think the slides are not shifting. Let me see if the slides are. Yes, I'm going to pause here. Okay. All right. I think, thank you, Latika, for pointing me out that the slides are not shifting. So I've now fixed that. Now, moving back, I think I missed a little bit of the context here, is that, let me recap. We need to look at what kind of impact that does COVID is having on us. There are 4 steps I would encourage startups to do. Number 1 is to assess the impact and ensure that you have enough runway. Number 2, optimize operations to conserve your cash burn, and then assess the new normal. Where will your market shift to at the end of this period? And 4th is, based on all these above 3, you have to look at what kind of pivot you need to make in your business. These are the 4 steps that we will talk about, and then we will move into particularly the GTM aspect of it. And this is the template that I was talking about earlier, where we talked about assessing the impact part of it. And this is a simple template, simple framework that talks about it. The framework is primarily to look at whether you're having a mild or a moderate or a severe impact in which part of the business, because not all parts of your business will get impacted in a similar manner. You may be selling multiple products, you may be selling to multiple customer segments. So different parts of it might move a little differently. And you have to look at it from a timeline perspective. What do you think is the impact in 6 months? What do you think is the impact in 12 months and a long term, about 18 months? And then you kind of make a note of what's my revenue impact is going to look like, what my cost impact is going to look like. Do I have too much of a fixed cost? Is there a lot of variable costs? Can I play around with it? Can I keep my cost in line with the impact on my revenue and all of that? And so if you were to put this in a template, this would really help you kind of think through in a larger sense how your business is going to be impacted and how you need to prepare for it. The second step that I talked about is to optimize your cash burn. You need to really think about what is really core to you and focus on it. In every business, there is a 80-20 rule, or sometimes it's 70-30 rule, sometimes it's 60-40 rule. But there is a rule where there is a disproportionate affiliation between the effort to the result. If you were to look at your customers, if you were to look at maybe you have 100 customers, you would see that 80% of your business comes from 20 customers. If you were to look at 5 products that you are selling or a solution that you're selling, you would see that 20% of your features are actually being used by 80% of your customers. So there is a 80-20 rule there. I think you need to move to the core and cut down ruthlessly any spend on anything else. Then the second thing is stop all experiments at this point of time. At this point of time, it is to stick to the core. You can always get back to your experiments later, but stick to your core and cut down any experiments that you have started. Number three is you might have created a lot of sunk cost, like you've invested in some initiatives, and you may think that, hey, if I cut down, what happens to that cost? Is it gone waste? That's okay. It's called sunk cost for a reason, and you don't want to be spending your time, energy, people, money against something that doesn't really materially be useful for you. You can always get back there, but that's a business call that you have to make and say, rationalize all your sunk cost. Fourth, look at all variable costs very, very closely. Variable costs are the most easiest for you to tune out and tune back in. So make as many things as variable as possible, and then you can match your burn to your runway need. If you need a runway of 12 months to 18 months, you need to match your burn. That is in your own hands. Reduce and conserve the burn so that you give yourself 12 to 18 months of runway, which I think we all will need in this climate. Now, looking at the third step, which is assessing the new normal. Post-COVID, we all have to realize that it will not be the same as what it used to be. It will not be the same. In a macro level, your customers' needs will change, their habits will change, their urgency level will change, their paying propensity will change. A lot of things will happen. What used to sell may not sell anymore, and something else becomes more important and urgent. So what does that new normal look like for you? And I think you need to kind of take a stab at what that will look like for your business. I think once you prepare for that, then it gives you a little bit of clarity of where you are, what you need to cut down, where you want to go when the things come back to normal in its own course of time, maybe in 12 months or 18 months. With these three steps, the final steps is a pivot, and this is the first three steps are leading up to this. All of us have to pivot. There is just no way it is going to be business as usual. We may be facing two type of scenarios, two type of pivots, and sometimes you may actually have to pivot on both. And what are these two type of pivots? Number one is a strategic pivot. And strategic pivot is what is very simply put, in the post-COVID situation, if your market is going to be drastically different, and if your market have been permanently altered, and it may not bounce back, or it may not bounce back for a long time, you need to look at a strategic pivot, because you won't be able to sell the product or the solution that you're selling today. You will have to shift to a new business or pivot it to a very different segment or a very different geography or a very different product altogether. So this is what we call as a strategic pivot. The second one is more of a tactical pivot, which is you think that the market will rebound post-COVID, but it's right now is contracted because of the COVID situation. But there will not be any fundamental shift in your market or the product. In this case, all you have to make sure that you survive all the way till things bounce back. And so you have to take a tactical detour to tide over the tough times. Now, how do you manage your revenue flow? How do you manage your cash flow and your expenses? So this may require you to take a tactical detour, and that's what I call as the tactical pivot. In some situations, you may have to do both. If your market is also altered and you also need longer runway, which means you might have to figure out newer revenue sources, which may not align to where you want to be, but right now you don't have a choice. You may have to do both strategic and tactical pivot. The whole idea is make sure you dig your heels and get through this tough period. And that's what you need to focus on, because at the end of the tough period, typically markets will boom, and at the time, rising tide lifts all boats. You need to be there, keep your boat intact when that lift comes in. That's the whole idea of how you kind of look at these 4 steps. So these are the 4 steps, and I'm sorry about that earlier. The transition of the slides wasn't showing up properly. So let's. I'm going to pause here and say recap this. The 4th step is look at the impact: mild, severe, medium, moderate, or severe. Second, optimize your operational burn. Number 3, assess the new normal, and 4, pivot based on whether your strategy is moving or your tactics are moving. Okay, so now moving on, I'm going to be talking about the GTM aspect of it. In this market, so now we know that we are going to be pivoting. We used to go to market in certain way, and typically there is a great book called Traction, and it kind of lists about 19 different channels that you can leverage in a normal business scenario. Obviously, you won't be doing all the 19 all the time. You would probably pick maybe 5 or 6 of them, and which would be more relevant to your business. But in this COVID times, I think you have to think a little differently, because if you are thinking about marketing or go to market, there is an investment, there is expense involved, and with respect to the return that you're expecting. And what we are looking for is ways in which you can conserve the expense but still operate to kind of grow your market. And how is it that you can do it is what we will be thinking about. So this slide is relevant for normal times, but in the COVID times, I'm going to be talking about 20 GTM tactics that you can apply, and not all of them will be applicable to every startup, because your industry scenario would be different. You would be what works in some that may not work in others. So pick and choose. I'm not expecting everybody to be adopting all the 20. But even if you get like 3 or 4 of them out of this, then that's good enough for you to actually focus and then try out, right? So here is the 20 GTM tactics. Let's go through one by one, and I'll just give some color commentary on it. And you can ask me questions during the question and answer period at the end of it. The first one is, I think we are all in the lockdown mode. We are all doing our business virtually. Content becomes very critical. Content was always king, but now content is the dictator. If you don't have good content, you need to really focus on developing good content. So content marketing is, even today, is number one, and in fact, it's actually much more compelling in terms of how you do it. So relook at what kind of content you can create, and in this period, and how can you market your content through blogs and through LinkedIn posts and the white papers and all that. But come up with content, because today you have to reach out to your customers virtually, and content serves as your voice. It serves your narrative, and if it's not compelling enough, then you don't have a bite. Number 2 is digital channels are the only channels at this point of time. There's no physical channel at this point of time. Eventually it'll slowly come back, but you need to be able to really use digital channels very effectively. This includes SEO, SEM, blogs, and LinkedIn posts, and white papers, and your own website, and all of that. So digital channel becomes very critical. And the third one is emails are working much better. In fact, I use a lot of email, and I'm seeing a change in how it was earlier and now. Earlier, email used to be very noisy, in the sense that the open rate and attention that email gets was much less compared to now. Actually, now I'm getting much better attention span on email, and that's probably because we are all spending in front of our computers, so we are checking our emails all the time versus being in physical meetings. So email is something that you really need to work better. And in email itself is like a 1 hour webinar that we can do on how to write good emails. But primarily, if I were to summarize all that, it's your context matters. You need to customize your email. Please don't send blanket emails and templatized email content. Please care about the person who's reading it. Email is a personal medium, unlike a website. When you are sending an email, nobody likes reading a generic content. They like reading more specific content under email that has been meant for them. So if you customize it, you will get a better result. Number 2, focus more on the title and focus on the first paragraph. These 2 are very critical, and keep it very simple and keep it direct. These are the things I would say, very basic rules that you have to follow with respect to email. And then the next tactic is to go deeper with your existing customers. Existing customers are your low-hanging fruits. You already have trust established with them. You are doing business with them. What more can you do for your existing customers. Think about upsell, think about cross-sell, think about deepening your solution. If you have implemented in one group, see if you can implement it in more groups within the within the company, and see what you can do with your existing customers, because that's a very farming is a very important aspect of revenue generation, because you can see quick results, and you don't have to involve in developing newer relationships there. Then with the new customers and prospects, you need to really take a different approach. You need to take a co-creation approach and be very consultative. What do I mean by that? You need to really listen to their pain points and problems and see how you can fit in there. Even if it doesn't fit in 100%, you need to be willing to customize or change your offering to suit their pain point today. And the reason is everybody's hurting, and in this time, they need something that can really help them. And they can't really take on any projects, or they can't put in any investments which is aspirational. They will only go for things that can solve their problem today. So listening to them, co-creating with them, it becomes very critical at this point. And then finally, the another tactic here is that if you're going to be doing a tactical pivot, which means you're going to be saying like, look, I need to raise some cash until things kind of become better for me to move back on my own product line. Look at your own core capabilities, right? Look at your team. Look at your engineering team. You look at your marketing team, and maybe you can even offer marketing team as a service to your customer. So this has nothing to do with what you do as a business. It is a very tactical move. You are basically trying to make some money here to manage your cash and cash burn. So you could in fact look at, if you have a marketing person, you could actually make that person as a consultant and give it to one of your customer or a partner, and then charge for that. And it is got nothing to do with what you're doing as a startup. I totally get it, and it's a detour from what you're doing. But right now, if you really need the money, you have to do it. Similarly, your own technical people are specialists. I mean, in most of the startups, you have a lot of specialists. Look at what all capabilities that you have in your plan, and then your technical folks can become a consultants for your customers, or take on a project and deliver, which has nothing to do with your startup or your solution, but it really helps in terms of kind of generating some bit of cash and getting you through, and you're building new relationship with your customers as well. The next strategy is around write some thought papers. This is a great time to kind of think about how you can develop some thought papers and develop your own profile and your own persona within the market, right? So customers are looking to solve some problems, and if you speak to them about how they can solve a problem, or if you kind of help them in that journey, write a thought paper, write a research paper, write a blog post, any of that, you need to start writing content today very actively. The next tactic is webinars and Web Roundtable, like what we are doing right now. You should be running a lot of webinars, and I'm seeing a lot of them actually do it, but I think you could do a lot more, and don't make it very generic, make it for your customers. And you don't even have to do large scale webinar. You could simply even do Web Roundtable. You can invite 5 of your customers and then do a roundtable, web-based roundtable. So you got to do a lot of that. You don't have to wait for your things to change to go and meet them. We have to keep the conversation going, and these webinars and roundtables really help in doing that. And then the other part is you have to leverage some of your engineering team's capability and see if you can develop some diagnostic tests or self-assessment tests or a scoring test for your customers. So if you are solving a problem you're helping your a purchase department of a company, you could actually develop a self-assessment on how good is your purchasing process, and take a self-assessment, and then we will score you, and this will really help you think through how to make it better, and then we can make some recommendation. So your engineering team, instead of building new features, can actually be optimized to kind of build some widgets or diagnostic tools and scoring tools, which can help in terms of continuing the customer conversation, right? Because at this point of time, the more you are in front of your customers and in your market, the better it is for you, because that's where your startup is hurting. The next one you can do is do some discovery sessions. This is not a sales session. It is more of a session where you are consultative to your customers or your prospect, and you are saying, hey, you know what, I will help you figure out this part of it. I'm not selling. This is a discovery session. So you tell me your problems, where you are. I will help you, give you some solutions. And your customers or your prospects will love this. They appreciate this, because if they are hurting in their business, they would definitely need someone to kind of help them think through, or you become their sounding board of that, in this kind of process. The next one is to ask for referrals. Just call your customers, send emails, call your customers, have a chat with them, and say, hey, you know what, could you refer me to people? And in fact, in your discovery sessions, when you are talking to even non-customers, their prospects, you're not asking for business. At the end of the call, you could actually ask for referrals, and they would love to help someone who has helped them. So this would really help in terms of putting yourself in front and having your existing network help you in terms of generating some referrals. I am, in fact, very surprised, a lot surprised, that how little startups use this tactic. Asking for referral is the basic tactic. You should be asking everybody, saying, can you help me? Can you help make introductions? And we don't do it. And a lot of startups talk to me, and at the end of it, I offer them and say, hey, do you want some referrals? And that's when they even ask me. It's almost a minority of them who would actually open up and say, Bala, I want you to introduce me to this person. And by the way, when you ask for a referral, you have to do a little bit of a research. There's a right way of asking for referral and a wrong way of asking for referral. The wrong way of asking for referral is that if you walk up to a person and say, hey, can you introduce me to anybody who can help me? That's a really wrong way. That means you are lazy. You haven't done enough research to even look into their contacts or look into their network and find out who among their network would be useful to you. The right way of doing referral is exactly that. When you meet a person, you first look up about that person on LinkedIn. It's a simple LinkedIn search, and you can look at their contacts, you can look at where they have worked in the past, and their experience, and now you will be able to assess who can they help introduction with. And then when you go to them, you ask for specific introduction. You say that, I saw that you are connected to this person. Could you please help me? Is it possible? I mean, would you be willing to make introduction to that person? Or I saw that you worked in this company. Is there any way you can help me make introductions within that company? That is a better and specific way of asking for referral. And at the end of it, if they say yes, you have to write up a forwardable email and say that, I'm going to send you an email which you can use to forward to that person. This is very important, because a lot of times, a lot of people say, please make an introduction, and then they walk away. And the job and the work of actually writing an email right way and forwarding it lies on the person who's referring, which seems like it's a penalty, right? So instead, you have to write that email, send it to them. So all you are expecting from that person is to forward that email. And that's the right way of asking for referral. And it's a magical way of getting new clients and getting more leads. The next strategy is building partnerships. At this point of time, you also have to conserve your bandwidth in terms of your sales, and partnership is a great way in terms of and co-sell partnership or any other type of partnership is a fantastic way to kind of go together, because you then share the cost of customer development, right? So Microsoft has a fantastic program of co-sell program, and you have to really double down and build that partnership and go deeper into looking at how you can sell through and co-sell with a partner. Then the next thing is affordable loss. Affordable loss is a very interesting concept, is that what is important to you may not be important to somebody else, and what is important to somebody else may not be as critical or important to you. So when you discover this complementarity of needs and resources, then you can actually stitch together a very interesting complementary value proposition, which is, for example, for a large company, extending a credit line is easy. maybe they are sitting with better cash flow than you are, and but they want to get better deal, better price point. And for you, you don't mind getting that cash today, but you don't you need that cash today, and you don't mind giving a little more discount. This is a beautiful complementarity, the affordable loss. So when you speak to your customer, you can think about what is very important to them, and what is important to you, and look at how you can stitch this together in a way that they give up something which they don't really care about, but that is valuable to you. The next one is around automating your sales and marketing process. A lot of us actually don't spend too much time in actually thinking through about our sales and marketing process and what can be automated. And there's tremendous amount of tools are available in terms of automating this process, which can make it easy for you to know where you are getting traction, where you are getting which channel is working for you, which keyword is working for you, what content is working for you, and all of that. And typically, when you're busy in a normal time, you don't have the bandwidth to actually look at automating these processes. And now is a great time to actually automate it so that you get better sales and marketing insight, and that will really help you to dig deeper into certain keywords and certain areas of your sales process and optimize that. And this is a great time for us to actually look at that and automate that. The next part of it is that it's again a very force multiplier is to build a community. All of us actually think about going to market by ourselves, but sometimes some of you are probably in a market where having a community around you, having evangelists around you can actually help you reach faster. You might not have thought about this earlier, but now is the time you have to think about the force multiplier of a community which can pick up your product and then sell, or pick up your product and become an evangelist. Look at how you are structuring your product. Maybe you can white label it, or maybe you can create a platform which you can provide for others to start promoting it, and you make some money out of it, right? So you have to look at how can I build a community around my solution. The next tactic is around open sourcing. It's actually a very interesting tactic. Sometimes if you are looking at a solution that has a significant friction of adoption, open sourcing is a fantastic way of thinking about it. You may have two versions of it, and you could open source one version, and you could have another premium version that is not open source. But the open source version really picks up adoption. You put it out there, you build a community around it, and this open source and the community building can go together, and the community actually starts promoting your platform or your product, and then the adoption grows. And you could build on top of the Linux type of a model where you are doing open sourcing of your platform, and you're building some consulting around it and some training around it and support around it, and you're building a very different business model. In today's world, if you can open source, if there is an opportunity for you to open source, and if you can think through a good structure around it, it's a great, powerful model and can bring down friction of adoption of your platform within your customer. The next one is affiliate network, or rewards or program or loyalty program, which incentivizes other people, your affiliates, to kind of promote your product. And I think that's another way you are bringing more people to adopt your message and narrative, and then help you really grow in the market. Then the another one, which is very important, again, I think this is a magical tactic, but we don't use it at all, very ineffective. It does take a bit of a habit change on our side as well, but very powerful, is to create asks. Here is a simple exercise that you should do. The exercise is you start with a set of stakeholders that you would talk to, like potential customer, potential influencer, potential investor, any of this. You have like potential partner. You have different persona of people that you talk to. If you were to meet a partner, what would your ask from the partner be? If you were to meet a potential customer, what would that ask from the customer be? And if you were to meet a potential influencer, what would your ask from the influencer be? So you have to list down these asks, like 4 or 5 asks, before even you go out and talk to people. And so when you are having conversations, you realize, hey, this person is a potential influencer. And so you immediately know what is your ask. These 4 or 5 things that I'm going to ask, I can throw at this person and then say, hey, can you help me in any of these 4 or 5 things? And it would really open up. And I've seen that when you ask someone, they do it most often than not. And when you ask clearly, in the sense like make it very simple and very clear as to what you're expecting from them, they will do it in almost like 80% of the time. So you need to find, you need to construct a very clear ask from people, and then you have to be prepared for any meeting. Don't walk into any meeting without knowing what you're going to be asking from that person. In the worst case, they will say no. That's it. You don't lose anything, right, by asking, but you lose a huge opportunity by not asking. So I would say, as a golden rule, you should do this not just in the bad times or challenging times. You should also do it in the good times. But in good times, sometimes it gets diluted. But in the challenging time, you have to squeeze as much as possible from whatever you have access to. And so create your asks and be shameless. Ask people. And in every conversation, you can open up and say, you know what, I have some asks, but I will ask it at the end. Let's continue our conversation. And people are totally fine. Then the other part is, create educational videos and content. That's very important. I think I've seen a tremendous amount of, recent uptick on interesting educative videos, and people consume that a lot. And if you kind of create those, bite-sized videos, it need not be professional at all. In fact, I've seen that the best educational videos are pretty amateurish in their production quality, but it's quite interesting and provocative plus helpful. You need to kind of look at those 3 angles, and then you should focus on creating as many educational videos as possible and put it out there and promote it. And finally, you need to look at how you can integrate with other platforms. It is something similar to strategy of partnership, but more from a technology integration type of a thing, where if your service is API-able, if you can convert your service into an API, and if you integrate it with other platforms and sell through them and you revenue share, that could be a win-win for both. It could be a value-added service or a value-added feature for other other businesses, and then you can create an API layer and then stick it in there. So these are some of the 20 Gtm. They are not the only 20. There's no hard and fast number to 20. These are something that I've seen companies use both in good times and in bad times, but I picked up these particularly because they are more relevant in challenging times. And none of these require you to bring in new cash. None of these require you to use something that you don't have. You need to stick with what you have and conserve it. In fact, you have to reduce the amount of things that you do and concentrate more on with all your resources on things that really are meaningful for you. So what I would recommend as next step is that out of these 20, pick 3 or 5, up to 5 strategies that you think is relevant to your business and that you think that you believe that can help you, right? So pick about 5, right? So and then for each of those strategies, generate 2 to 3 ideas for each. So you're talking about, if you picked about 4 strategies out of the 20 and you generated 3 ideas among those 4, you're talking about 12 ideas. Specific experiments that you can do very, very quickly, right? If, for example, if you want to go to that idea of self-assessment type of a idea, and you say, look, you know what, I think I can create a scoring or a self-assessment widget. So what kind of self-assessment widget can I create? That you can think of 2 or 3 of them, and then that's your specific experiment. And then you also have to have a clear idea of how will you measure its efficacy. How do you know whether it's working or not? You need to kind of have a success criteria for it, and then implement, and then just go focus on it, implement. You have 10, 12 things to try out, focus on it, implement, test, and measure to see if it is giving you results. And if it's not, then iterate. And if it's not giving any result at all, junk it and move on to the next one. And if it's giving some result, but you can optimize it, then you iterate. This is something you need to do on a daily basis, urgently, for you to kind of ensure that you create that runway for yourself to stick through until the time that the situation gets a little better in terms of economic situation there. So this is I think I've come to the end of my webinar on the strategies, but just so that we recap this particular section, let's go through the 20 strategies that we talked about. If you want to make notes, you can at this time. I'm going to go a little slow on this, but content marketing, what kind of content can you write and what kind of content can you market online? So now is the time you need to focus on it. Digital channels like SEO, SEM, LinkedIn, other digital channels that is important and relevant for you. You look at how do you optimize on that and how do you dig deep there. Email, I think you should spend tremendous amount of time on email at this point of time. Write customized, personalized emails, and you get better attention span during this time. Go deeper with your existing customers. Call up each of your existing customers and see what else can you do for them. Upsell, cross-sell, broad sell, which is primarily like going from one department to many departments. Optimize your solution for them, and so see if you can generate more revenue out of your existing customers and go deeper. You have already built trust with your existing customers, so this is a good place for you to spend your energy. For new customers, I think you need to be a little more open in your conversation, be consultative, look at co-creating it, look at their problem and see how you can fit in or change your solution to fit into their current problem. Then if you have to do a tactical pivot, which is primarily you need to somehow raise some, make some money to survive through 12, 18 months, you pivot on your capabilities. Look at every asset that you have. Look at your people, your marketing people, your sales people, your delivery people, your service people, service employees, engineering employees, and look at what can you do to make money out of them. And you could look at yourself, like you could be a consultant as well. So take on some tactical projects. If you have to build an app for someone, build an app for someone. I know this is a detour. I know this is not the conventional wisdom of what you should be doing, but these are not the conventional times. So you need to really see how you can generate cash. But if you have cash, if you have cash to cover for your runway, you don't need to really pick this up. The next one is write a lot of thought papers and research papers if you can, if that is important for your business. Then you look at webinars and web roundtables. You should be doing a lot of them with your partners, with your customers, and keep the conversation moving. It's very effective, and you look at multiple formats of doing it. Then look at creating some diagnostic tests or self-assessment and scoring tools. And the next one is discovery sessions. Even if you are not selling to a customer, having conversations with them becomes important, and so discovery session is an important one. Then moving on, asking for referral, very powerful. Research on the people that you are talking to, and when you are having conversation with anybody, you should be asking for, how can you help me? Is there a way you can introduce me to this person? But be very specific. Do your background checks on background research on who can they help, and be very clear about your ask. Look at partnerships and co-sell strategies, and that's very important because you can now leverage each other's resources, and that would really help in terms of building some traction. Looking at our affordable loss, it's primarily around what can you give up and what can your customer or your prospect can give up at this time. It's like a barter system. They may not value something that you value, and so you kind of construct a complementarity and then look at what is the affordable loss of this customer and what can I get for that. As simple as if they have some extra space for you guys to work out of when the lockdown opens up, you should you can even ask for that. You can reduce your burn on real estate. The final set is automate your sales and marketing processes. It gives you a lot of insights into where you are seeing traction, and that helps you in terms of pinpointing your opportunities. Build communities and build open source, and if possible, create an open source version of your product. Reduces friction of adoption, and also you build a community around it and build a rewards and affiliate network around it. That really opens up a new way of looking at your business. And then develop educational videos and bite-sized educational videos. Focus on informative and usefulness of it, not as much as production quality. And finally, integrate with platforms, and if you can create an API version of your product, this is a great time for you to kind of do that, as well as integrate it with platforms so that you can get distributed through them. So these are your 20 GTM, and if you could brainstorm, you could come up with more ideas than this. But I think this is a starting point that you can look at. Don't pick more than 4 to 5 strategies out of it. You don't want to spread yourself too thin, and generate few ideas, experiment, iterate, and see how things are working for you. With that, thanks for listening. I hope this was useful, and now we will move to questions.
Thank you so much, Bala. I think this has really been a power-packed 60 minutes in terms of GTM during these challenging times. There have been some questions from founders in the audience. One question was from Abhinav, who says that you are recommending us to pivot, but there are others who are saying stay the course. So could you explain what you mean by pivot? What are the different situations, or maybe verticals if there are startups who should pivot? And I'll give you some inputs in terms of what I've been talking to our founders.
Okay. So I explained the pivot that in two formats. One is the strategic pivot, which is if your business is not going to come back up, right? So then you need to pivot, which is you have to pivot your business itself. But if you think that this is a slump, and after the slump it's going to come back up, you don't need to do strategic pivot. You stay course, but you need to look at your cash. You need to look at whether you have enough money to kind of see through the downturn. And if you have enough money, yeah, stay course. But most of us realistically will not have that much money, and that means you need to figure out how you can get through this. And there you need to kind of look at tactical pivot, which is primarily taking on some tactical projects and looking at short-term way of making money. And it has nothing to do with your business staying the same. You stay course. But right now, I've seen some startups have 80% dip with their customers. Like, and their customers are not even talking to them. So there is an 80% dip. They think that the customers will come back up, and the reason for the dip is primarily because everything is locked down. And when the lockdown opens up, I think they think that the customers will come back. But what are you going to do till then to survive? You need to do a tactical pivot at the time. And the tactical pivot is, when you pick up a consulting project, can you do something else for your customer? Custom kind of a thing. Those are the ways you need to kind of see, about to see through this tough time, right? So I hope that answers your question on the pivot.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the startups that I'm advising was part of Microsoft Startups program. They were very focused in selling into the travel industry and retail industry, both of which today, is literally numb in terms of engaging with startups. So what they did was they took their solution and instead went and focused on the government sector. They've created a COVID solution, for the government sector, and also in the healthcare sector. These two sectors were really not on their priority, but
Right.
literally within a week they came up and realized that we should make this priority for a while, at least for the next 90 days, if not longer, and because it's going to take a while for the travel, and aviation industries to come back. So the messaging actually to all founders is really look at the sector in which your current clients are and understand whether they are really in the space to engage with you and find whether your solution can actually be adopted by other verticals. So that's the one of the, so it isn't really pivoting from what you're doing, maybe jigging your focus on the verticals that you're going after.
Absolutely.
Next question is, an interesting one, and I don't think this is only, during COVID times, is some enterprise customers don't have the courtesy to respond to emails when we do the follow up. Is it okay to be straightforward to ask, are you interested, or not in a subtle way?
I think it is. It's okay to be very direct and but respectful, right? So I think I have never seen anybody take it wrong if you are direct, but you are do it in a respectful manner. And you can typically the way I do it is that, look, I don't want to keep bothering you, but I felt that there is a need here. That's why I'm following up. If this is a nuisance to you, please let me know. I'll stop bothering you. But it would be great if you think there is value to continue the conversation. It's a very direct email, and you are telling them you don't want to waste their time, and you also kind of want to be respectful of that. Be very direct. I think in India, one of the things that we somehow hesitate is what do they think if I ask them directly. In my opinion, in every meeting, every customer meeting, I've been a customer. I've also been a person that's been a provider. So when I'm a customer, I always felt that the person talking on the other side was very direct and got to the point and say, look, if this is a pain point, here is my solution. Here is what I can do for you, and I will tell you whether it's a priority for me or not, and then we can move on. Correct. So you should take that approach and be very direct.
And what you could also do is ask them when they'd like you to get in touch with them, right? So don't close the door completely, because right now they may not have the mind space in engaging with you. So what you could, ask the customers and say, I understand that there are a lot of other priorities. Is it okay for me to get back to you in 8 weeks' time or 4 weeks' time? Typically, they say yes if they were to respond to you. That's one. Second thing that I have personally, again, when I put my founder hat on, is to engage with customers when I've sold into a compete or somebody in that industry. So if I've gone and sold to one hospital and I'm trying to get in touch with another hospital, I would say, okay, without necessarily giving the name, saying that this is a solution that was adopted by one of the hospitals, and I thought you may be interested in knowing what we did. That typically, lands up getting the person on the other side curious as to why did their competitor adopt your solution. So you need to be very, that much more focused in terms of how you're engaging with your customers today. But many of the tactics, honestly, is something that you need to do anyways during normal times too. So this is not something that I would say that it has to be done only in the times of COVID. Some things that Bala mentioned about having a runway in place. I always tell people that you need, having a 3 month, 6 month runway, hoping that you will raise funds and that your Series B is happening or your seed stage is happening. You never focus on running a business that is going to be able to scale on its own merit, right? You are so dependent on the funds that you have raised that you don't focus on building a great business. Positive unit economics is something that is so very, very critical in any in any market, even more so right now. because you have to assume that things are going to take longer. For those of you, I think, who have not seen bad times, again, Bala and I were chatting before this session. We've both been through 9/11, 2001, when everything came down crashing. We were in 2008 when everything came down crashing, and there is a life after, and things do look up. I think this is a time when each one of you should look at the opportunity, in front of you, and really look at how do you provide your customers with a solution that they actually really need, and that's going to increase their productivity and potentially reduce their costs. These are things that you have to come out in terms of a very, very clear value proposition. Moving on to the next question is that how do we approach prospects through LinkedIn? We generally observe people accept invitations but not bother to revert back. Is there any communication gap? So if we were to use LinkedIn as a lead generation method.
I think LinkedIn is a fantastic lead generation method, most qualified platform out there. So let's noise. The best way I have seen people respond is if you write a very compelling request on their email when you are sending an email, if you're not connected to them, and if you're sending an email, if you write a more compelling and more appropriate message to them, the chance of them responding to that is very high. With email, by the way, LinkedIn is nothing but email without knowing their email address, correct? So with that type of a strategy, what is very important is to empathize with the other person. Like, a lot of times when people send, they only talk about themselves. They'll say, hey, I have this tool, it's great tool, it gives you 30% ROI, and you should use it. That's doesn't really work, particularly in the LinkedIn. You have their profile, you know what they do, which industry they are in, and so you need to kind of customize it to say, I know this is what's happening in your industry, and this we have, like what Latika mentioned earlier. We have this solution is already being used by few others in your industry. You should really take a serious look at it, and this is why you should take a look at it. Here's how we can help you. And if you kind of message it that way, I think you would see a lot more people responding there.
I think that's I know personally that when people send me emails, emails just I get hundreds of emails a day. But when people get in touch with me on LinkedIn, I try as much as possible, if there is a way that I can help them or engage with them or connect with them, I do. So I recommend to all of you that use LinkedIn in a very, very strategic manner. Don't I sometimes get messages like, hi ma'am, how are you, what's up? Now, I'm not interested in engaging with, hi man, what are you, what's up, right? But if I get a very specific request saying, Latika, I'm interested in Microsoft for startups, I have a product company, I'm in pre-revenue stage, can I qualify for your program? It takes me one line to say, yes, you do, no, you don't, come back to me later, right? So please be very point on what you're asking in your LinkedIn messages, so that it grabs the person's attention in terms of what you're trying to do. I think the niceties are great, but just kind of expecting me to respond to hi ma'am, what's up? I kind of ignore those messages. The next question is, what are some variable rewards startups can offer to keep their customers engaged?
What rewards? Variable.
What are some variable rewards startups can offer to keep their customers engaged?
Got it. So one is customers like their problem solve. I think it depends on whether you are talking to a large customer or a small customer, because what they look for is very different. I think overall they look for a total the value that they are getting out of this. There are different motivations that can drive their behavior. Particularly, what I can tell is in a enterprise sale. But if you are selling into an enterprise, the motivations are different. If you are selling to a consumer, direct consumer, the motivations are different, because who pays is for a consumer. The consumer is paying with her own money. In an enterprise, the person who's buying could be different from the person who's using, could be different from the person who's getting value out of it, right? So if you're selling an accounting solution, an accountant would use it, but a manager would get a report out of it. Therefore, there's a different value of it, and the purchase manager is the one buying for it. So there are different people who are involved, and they all look at it from a very different lens. If you are talking to a finance person, their lens is very different. But if you're talking to a end user, their lens is very different. And if you're talking to a manager, their lens is different. They would look for productivity. They would look for insight. They would look for intelligence. And if you're looking to the user, they would look for how fast can I get stuff done? How does it reduce my workload? And how can I reduce my errors? And there are different value that that each of them generate. So you need to kind of look at who's the persona that I'm selling, what value are they getting out of it, and that gives you an idea of the rewards in terms of what you can do to them. One of the best things, particularly in a B2B scenario, is which we totally ignore, is the reward of recognition that your user gets within their company, right? So do they look smart? Do they get a promotion? Do they get a pat on the back because of adopting your solution? So this would be something that you have to start thinking much more seriously. And that is a much bigger reward than what other rewards that material rewards that you can give to someone. In most of the cases, somebody adopting a solution, they do it they do it for two reasons. One is a rational reason, and the second is a personal reason. And the personal reason is more emotional in nature, right? Does it make me look good in front of my colleagues, in front of my boss? Does it mean that I get a tick mark where I get a little promotion, or I get some recognition within my organization? Those are things that you could actually be focused on in terms of making I always tell, in a B2B product, your product needs to make your user a hero within their organization, and that would be the biggest reward.
Great. Another question that's come in, and I will take this question, and Bala, then you can take that. Do you recommend canceling our co-working space lease, as we don't know when it will really open up? My response is, if you're going month to month, absolutely. In fact, the day the lockdown was there, you should have put in a request to get out of it, right? Right now, we don't know when we will go back. The good news is that because people are going to be used to working from home, I do know that several co-working spaces, office spaces are going to be coming up with some better, more creative schemes to bring you back in. So depending on how you've signed your lease with your co-working space or with your landlord, this is definitely a way that you should go about saving costs. This comes across, look at every single contract you have in place, find out what your terms are, and then look and see whether they are relevant or not. One of the founders I spoke to, he told me that he looked at some contractors that he had on for marketing and realized that that's not a spend that he could do right now, so he decided to change it. However, he said as far as his tech team was concerned, he wanted to focus on his roadmap, and as a result, decided to continue to keep those consultants in place. So each one is going to have to decide what is really relevant to you in the next 90 days and in the next 180 days. Bala, your point of view?
Absolutely. I completely concur with what you said, Latika. There is just no excuse for you to conserve cash at this point of time. In fact, I would say, even if you, let's say, have put in some deposit, and just evaluate how much is the deposit. If it's another month, just give up. Think of it as a sunk cost. Right now, you need to conserve cash outflow as much as possible, and so that you build a buffer, and that buffer builds confidence in terms of being able to support your team, being able to think for longer term. If you are watching out your money depleting, and if that is giving you, if I don't want that stress to burden you even more than the stress we already have. So conserve as much as possible, and if you are in a co-working space, fantastic. In terms of like Latika said, month on month, just cancel it, and you'll get back, and there's always enough options available after you go back. And for all you know, your own requirements might change at the end of it. So I think at this point of time, make those decisions, even though they are hard. Make those decisions quickly.
The next question that was there is, we've tried AdWords for marketing but not found anything useful. What can we do further? I was on a webinar yesterday which Thai Delhi had, where they discussed about, they had three founders from the retail industry in terms of retail products. Almost all three of them said that they've completely frozen their ad spend right now, because since even their e-commerce place, what is the point in terms of pushing out ads, right? So I think it really depends on what your industry and what your business is focused on. If you really believe that, I mean, you can't do any deliveries at this particular point, you may want to completely freeze on that strategy. Bala?
Yeah, I totally agree. AdWords are I would say, a nice to have at today's world. So unless you are completely dependent on AdWords, and if it's working, you should look at completely kind of rationalizing that. There are enough other ways in which you can leverage different ideas that we spoke about, and which don't cost you money.
The next question is, what is your view for travel tech startups during COVID and post-COVID?
Well, in COVID scenario, obviously the travel is the most hurt industry, and post-COVID, it depends on how government is helping them get back on their feet. It may, I would say the impact is severe, and the time to rebound is probably going to be medium to long term, not immediate.
Another question that came on is that what about funding? I think I see about 3-4 different questions that are asking about what do we do about funding. Again, based on discussions with the industry, I think VCs are continuing to fund. However, the reality is the first focus is going to be their existing portfolio companies, helping them in terms of understanding what their runways are, and how do they kind of look and see whether they need to give some bridge funding to keep those startups funded. But across the board, I think the VCs are saying that they are looking at deals every day, and they're looking out for people to come up with great with great business plans. What do you see out there, Bala?
Yeah, I agree with you, Latika. So I think VCs are long-term positive. They think that it's going to be tough, but there's no fundamentally. If you see, there is no fundamental structural issues in the markets, right? So there's no. It's not like, unlike the financial crisis that happened in 2008. This is a externality. It's a health impact virus, and that's why we're all sitting at home. Otherwise, we would be out there doing business. So VCs are a net positive about things bouncing back. Please don't expect that VCs will rush to write a check. They won't, because if I can wait, I will wait, right? So I think unless the deal is very competitive and there are multiple VCs, kind of interested, you have to be prepared that the money will come, but money will come little later. It will come only when the the trend is upwards. It won't come when the trend is still going down. And if you look at it right now, the trend is still bad. Like we have not peaked on the crisis scenario. When all the macroeconomic indicators are showing that we are past the crisis and things are going to look up, then we see sentiment will also be much more positive, and that will things will open up. There is money. There is just doubt of money. Not come as quickly as you expect.
I think I agree with you. I think it's not going to come as easily as you expect. I always tell people that even in a normal time, it takes 9 months to raise money,
Yeah,
right?
correct.
So it really comes back to fundamentals, right? That we need to kind of really focus on. There is nothing really from the fundamentals that we are coaching each one of our founders, which is during even the good times we say watch out for your runway, watch out for your burn. My favorite conversation is with every founder who comes in and is talking about business that they're hoping to get, and then when I look at their burn, and this is pre-COVID times also, Bala. Yes, I know I pretty much kind of do the math and then say, do you realize you're going to run out of money in 4 months' time? They said, oh, yes, but we are looking at a bridge round. The reality is that you should not be doing that even during great times. I do hope that as a result of what is going on, that more and more founders recognize that they have to, again, I keep going back to the fundamentals in terms of focusing on the positive unit economics. There's a question out here which says, is it fine to ask cloud partners to help startups with free cloud credits to help us with cost saving to survive? Right? My response is that you can ask, but I'm not sure how many cloud partners will give you free credits. For us as Microsoft for Startups, we from the beginning, when we do engage with startups, we bring the credit conversation actually right to the end. We don't do a spray and pray the way we give every startup who's looking for free credits. In our opinion, this is we really want to focus on startups who are looking to leverage our technology and not kind of look at somebody to underwrite their business, right? So it comes back to looking at it, saying that yes, you can ask. There are people who are providing it, but is that the right thing for you strategically, long term? Moving, jumping from one cloud provider to the other cloud provider because you're getting free cloud credits is not potentially the right strategic decision for you. So this is something that each of you need to ask to say, okay, why am I moving from one cloud platform to the other cloud platform? That's something that you should really spend time in and try to figure out. Is it really for purely for survival's sake? Then it's a different reason in terms of what you're asking for. But how long are you going to survive? So that really is some up to each founder. Bala?
I completely echo your sentiment, and I think the startups should stop looking at free credits as funding their business. The fundamental business economics should not be subsidized by free credit because it doesn't serve the startup well as it doesn't serve the cloud partner well also, right? I mean, it actually goes down bad. Your fundamental business has to be strong, and you look at the platforms and cloud platforms as a partnership, like Latika rightly mentioned. Unless the cloud platforms see that value in the partnership, it doesn't really serve both sides.
Right. So for us, there's a question about how do you become part of Microsoft for Startups. If you go to the Microsoft site, you have all the information on Microsoft for Startups, or drop me a message on LinkedIn and I'll send you the link. We are very clear when we engage with the startups. We talked about co-sell and channel. For us to actually start with the engagement to get a startup co-sell, on our marketplace and ready, it takes close to 6 months of investment of time. But if when I start working with the founder and I realize that they're really in for 12 months on Azure, 12 months on the next cloud provider, and 12 months on the others. I don't want to invest time with that startup in taking them, getting them co-sale ready, and taking them, to our client, to our enterprise clients. So that's something that is very, very important for founders to recognize, that decide how you want to engage with your tech partner, and see what support they can give you during these times. Bala, the next question is, what is your prognosis for the manufacturing industry, and how do startups who are engaging in the manufacturing industry, what do they need to do?
I think the manufacturing industry has a second order effect. It doesn't have the first order effect. The demand contraction will take a little lagging. And then the moment I think the first thing they are affected by is the fact that people are not going into the factories. And when the lockdown opens up, there will be a surge in the demand because a lot of the inventory got depleted. And so you will see a surge in the demand, but expect a dip afterwards before the real surge comes in. And the reason is initially the surge will be to kind of restock the depleted inventory, but then the fundamental demand in their end consumer industry needs to pick up, which will take some time, and then that's when it will come. So I'm expecting a sinusoidal curve, a initial bump up, but then a bump down, and then a bump up again. And in the first part will be for a few quarters, couple of quarters, and then the next part will be another couple of quarters later.
Thank you. The next one is, could you please give us an example on how to automate sales and marketing processes?
So there is, if you were to look at your, leads and as well as the website visits, as well as the conversion from your website, contact me form and everything else, you need to kind of see how you can create a workflow which flows directly into your CRM system, right? And the second one is, if you are running any campaigns, or even the blog campaigns, or any content marketing campaigns, or email marketing campaigns, you can automate it to say that you can get all the number of opens, number of read, number of responses into a CRM system automatically without you having to do a lot of manual work. There are tons of tools which are out there, which is Marketo, which is a big one, but I would say there is Pipedrive. There are different tools which are which can do all of that. And what this does is, the whole idea is, the automation is not just to save manual effort. I would look at automation as, who is reading? I mean, where is the pick in terms of interest level from my prospects and my customer? And so that helps to conserve and focus more on that type of prospect. I'll give you an example. You write, let's say, 3 different blog posts on 3 different topics, and topics are related to the pain point that you are trying to solve, and then you see a little bit of a uptick on one of them, but conversion higher on the second of them, right? So you need to know where is the interest, where is the actionable kind of a thing, and that requires you to have some data that of the readership, of the conversion, of number of interest that got generated, and number of conversations that are going through out of that. And there are tools which can help you develop this type of insights, and that's what I mean by marketing, or automating the marketing and your sales process.
I think we have time for one last question, Bala.
Sure.
What is the, and I think this is like the not just $1 billion, but $1 trillion global question, which is, what is the prognosis on how long this situation might take to normalize? What is the ideal runway we should plan for?
Well, if you know the answer, let us know. We have no idea even for how long is the lockdown going to last. I think it is anybody's guess. Everybody is revising their estimate. Initially they said it's going to be millions of people dying. Then they said 200,000 people. Now they are saying maybe under 50, 60,000. So anybody's guess is going to be wrong, right? So it is playing out as we speak. And in my opinion, there are two waves. One is the health wave, the whole virus, vaccination, number of people impacted, the spread of it, and all that. And the second, the economic wave, and how soon the health impact ends. The amount of economic impact is going to be limited to that much. As such, we are looking at 2020 being more or less like a washout, in the sense that I don't think, let's say, media and entertainment, 2020, media and entertainment and grocery industries and maybe pharma industry, 2020 is not going to be a great year from a demand perspective. But in my opinion, if I were to hazard a guess, I would say, please